The air inside the reactor chamber didn't just burn, it screamed. Cale gritted his teeth, the enamel aching as he forced his way through the blinding violet radiance. A heartbeat that shook a planet thrummed beneath his boots, synchronizing with the erratic pulse of the woman floating in the center of the room. Surviving the voltage of love was supposed to be a metaphor, not a literal test of endurance against a gigawatt discharge. Alara's eyes were white-hot voids, her skin dissolving into pure energy. She was pushing him away with a magnetic field strong enough to crush a tank, trying to save him from her own instability, but Cale wasn't leaving. He reached into the searing light, his glove smoking as he fought the repelling force. He had to reach her hand. 72 hours earlier, the only heat between them had been the shy, quiet warmth of a shared glance across a perimeter fence. Life on the frontier of Ethelgard IV was defined by distance and hard light. Cale maintained the solar arrays, a solitary existence measured in rotations and energy outputs. His nearest neighbor was an enigma wrapped in bioluminescence. Alara was Luminari, a species the colonists whispered about in suspicious tones. They said her kind was volatile, ticking time bombs of biological plasma waiting to detonate. But Cale watched her with a fascination that had long ago deepened into longing. He saw the way the native flora leaned toward her when she walked the boundaries of her land. He saw the soft amber glow that pulsed from her silhouette when she thought she was unobserved, a resonance that seemed to call out specifically to him. The attraction was undeniable, a static charge that built up whenever they were near. He would check the perimeter sensors. She would tend her glowing garden. They orbited each other, two celestial bodies drawn together by gravity, but held apart by the fear of collision. He didn't understand her biology, and she seemed afraid that her proximity would hurt him. Then the cycle broke. The Mayflicker that escalated into a catastrophe. Cale was repairing a turbine when the primary grid surged, blowing the transformer bank in a shower of sparks. Still bruising purple. It wasn't a malfunction, it was the harmonic flux. She had entered a critical bioenergy cycle, her internal containment failing as her power spiked beyond the limits of her physical form. The alarms across the colony shrieked. Fear often masks a lack of understanding regarding foreign cultures or biology, and the colonists panicked. They didn't see a woman suffering. They saw a threat to their life support systems. Cale saw the convoy of heavy skimmers racing from the settlement, floodlights cutting through the twilight, weapons charged. They weren't coming to help. They were coming to neutralize the disruption. Cale didn't hesitate. True connection requires shared vulnerability and risk, and right now, Alara was the most vulnerable thing in the galaxy. He grabbed his mag rifle, not to fight her, but to stand between her and the ignorance marching toward her door. He sprinted across the fields, the ground trembling as her uncontrolled surges ripped through the bedrock. He could feel the static raising the hair on his arms, the air tasting of ozone and terror. He wasn't running from the danger, he was running directly into the eye of the storm. The blast doors sealed with a hydraulic hiss, muting the angry shouts of the colonists outside. Cale turned his back on the mob, facing the blinding core of the compound where the air rippled like heat off a tarmac. The radiation alarms were no longer beeping. They were a continuous flatline drone indicating maximum exposure. He didn't care. He pushed into the main chamber, the magnetic pressure slamming against his chest like a physical wall. We returned to the fire. Alara hovered in the center of the room, a star trapped in human shape. The violet light stripped the color from the walls, revealing the raw structural beams beneath. She was weeping, but her tears vaporized instantly into steam. The harmonic flux had taken her past the point of return, turning her biology into a planetary feedback loop. If she detonated, she wouldn't just take the colony, she would crack the tectonic plates. Cale forced one foot in front of the other. His boots scraped against the metal floor, sparking with induced current. The skin on his face felt tight, hot, stretching over his bones as the energy battered him. "Go back," her voice echoed in his mind, not spoken but felt, a vibration in his very marrow. "I cannot hold it. I'm not letting go," Cale roared, the sound torn from his throat. He lunged through the final barrier of resistance, his gloves disintegrating as he seized her wrists. The contact was instantaneous and overwhelming. It wasn't pain, it was existence amplified to a frequency the human body was never meant to hold. He became the ground wire for her lightning. He anchored her, pouring his own biorhythm into her chaotic surge, forcing their heartbeats to sync. 1 beat, 2 beats, a rhythm that defied the chaos. For a moment the room held a breathless stasis. The violet thrashing turned to a golden, steady hum. He looked into her eyes and saw not an alien stranger, but the woman who had watched him from across the fence, the only person who understood the language of isolation. Self-sacrifice can transform a momentary crisis into a lasting legacy of peace, and in that clarity, Alara made her choice. She realized that stabilizing the core wasn't enough. To save him, to save the colony that feared her, she had to release the form they hated. She leaned forward, pressing her forehead against his. The heat vanished, replaced by a coolness like fresh rain. "Live," she whispered. She shattered. There was no explosion, only a sudden, rapid expansion of light that passed through Kale, through the walls, through the planet itself. The blinding radiance washed over the mob outside, silencing their weapons and their fear. Kale woke days later, lying in the center of the compound. The roof was gone, open to the starlight, but the metal floor was no longer cold steel. It was carpeted in thick, luminescent moss. He stood up, his body aching but whole, and walked out into a world transformed. The harsh, arid landscape of Ethelgard IV was gone. In its place was a sprawling, bioluminescent jungle, pulsing with a gentle, rhythmic amber glow. The air was sweet, oxygen-rich, and filled with drifting spores of light. The colonists stepped out of their bunkers, weapons lowered, staring in awe at the paradise that had erupted from the threat they tried to destroy. Kale walked to the edge of the perimeter. He placed a hand on the trunk of a towering, radiant tree that hummed with a familiar resonance. He didn't need to speak. He could feel her in the photosynthesis, in the breeze that brushed his cheek, in the magnetic stability of the ground beneath his feet. She hadn't left. She became the world he walked upon. And as he looked up at the stars, he knew that one day, when his own light faded, he would sink into this glowing earth, and they would finally be one.